Your hands are shaking, not a little, not a nervous flutter. They're trembling so hard you can barely hold the phone that's recording the number on the screen in front of you. The room has gone silent. A second ago, it was chaos. Bells, lights, a crowd forming around you like you're the center of gravity in the room. Now, nothing, just eyes, dozens of them. Strangers staring at you like you're not a person anymore, like you're an event. You keep looking at the number. It doesn't move. It doesn't blink. It's just true. You think your life just changed forever. It did, just not the way you expected. Before we go any further, let's be honest about something. What you're about to watch is not a celebration of gambling. It's the opposite. This is a story built to show you, in slow motion, exactly how a life-changing amount of money can disappear. Not because of bad luck, but because of predictable, well-documented psychology. Every person in this story is fictional, but every mistake they make is real, and it happens to real people every single year. Here's the part almost nobody talks about. Winning big at gambling is astronomically rare. The stories you hear, the jackpots, the I turned $50 into $50,000 clips. Those are the exceptions that get filmed, shared, and remembered. The thousands of people who lost quietly that same night never make it into your feed. That's survivorship bias in action. You only see the survivors, so your brain quietly assumes the odds are better than they actually are. Add probability to that. Every casino game, every betting app, every jackpot machine is mathematically built so that, over enough time, the house wins. Not because it's rigged in some illegal sense, because the math is designed that way from the start. A win doesn't break that math. It just delays it. So keep that in mind as we go. This isn't a story about luck. It's a story about what luck does to a person's decision-making once it shows up, and the financial lessons hiding inside every choice that follows. Now, back to the room. The first thing you notice, once the shock starts to fade, is your phone. It hasn't stopped buzzing. Texts, missed calls, a notification from an account you haven't opened in months, suddenly full of messages from people you haven't spoken to in years. Word travels fast when the number is big enough. By the time you get home, there's a local news van outside your building. Someone from the venue tipped them off. You didn't ask for any of this, but here it is anyway. A microphone in your face, a stranger asking how it feels, a photo of you that will exist on the internet forever. Your family reacts first with disbelief, then with something that looks like joy but has an edge to it. Your phone rings. It's a cousin you haven't spoken to since a wedding 3 years ago. He's just checking in. You know exactly what that means. Underneath the excitement, something else is creeping in. Fear. Not fear of losing the money. Not yet. Fear of what to do with it. Fear of saying the wrong thing to the wrong person. Fear that the life you had yesterday doesn't fit anymore, and you don't have a new one to replace it with. This is where the first real lesson of the night lives, and it has a name. Windfall psychology. Researchers who study sudden wealth. Lottery winners, inheritance recipients, athletes who sign their first big contract, have found the same pattern again and again. The brain isn't built to process a life-changing sum of money all at once. Financial decisions are supposed to be made slowly, with time to think, compare, and course correct. A windfall skips all of that. It hands you a decision with the weight of a decade and asks you to make it in a weekend while you're still emotionally overwhelmed. That emotional overwhelm is the dangerous part. Studies on sudden wealth recipients consistently show the same outcome. People who receive large windfalls fast tend to make faster, more emotional financial decisions than people who build wealth slowly. And faster decisions, on average, are worse decisions. It's not that winners are reckless people. It's that no one is a good decision maker under that much adrenaline. You don't know any of this yet, of course. You just know you feel powerful, untouchable, and a little bit numb. And that combination is exactly when the spending starts. The apartment is the first thing to go. You didn't plan it. You just found yourself standing in a glass-walled unit on a high floor, a leasing agent telling you it fits your new lifestyle, and before you've fully processed the number on the lease, you're signing it. Next is the car. Then the wardrobe. Then a table at the kind of restaurant you used to walk past, feeling like an outsider, now walking in like you own the room. Because for tonight, in a sense, you do. people start noticing. Not just your family, everyone. You get invited places you never used to get invited to. You get looked at differently. It feels, for the first time in your life, like the world has finally caught up with how you always hoped it would see you. This is where we need to pause and talk about something called lifestyle inflation. Lifestyle inflation is simple. As income rises, spending rises with it. Often just as fast, sometimes faster. It feels natural. It even feels earned. But it quietly erases the one advantage a windfall is supposed to give you: a head start. Here's the distinction that matters most, and it's one most people never learn until it's too late. The difference between income and wealth. Income is money moving through your hands. Wealth is what's left after it moves through. A person can have enormous income and zero wealth if every dollar that comes in immediately goes back out. That's not a hypothetical. It's the most common story behind sudden wealth losses of every kind, from lottery winners to professional athletes. Then there's cash flow. Simply, the money coming in versus the money going out over time. A lease, a car payment, a lifestyle full of recurring expenses. None of these show up as one big, scary number. They show up as small, manageable-looking monthly amounts. But stacked together, they quietly consume a windfall far faster than any single purchase could. And underneath all of it sits the most important financial concept in this entire story: assets versus liabilities. An asset puts money in your pocket over time. A liability takes money out. A car depreciates the moment you drive it off the lot. A luxury lease is a liability wearing the costume of a reward. Even the appearance of wealth, the watch, the clothes, the table at the restaurant, is often just liabilities, dressed up to look like assets. This is why rich-looking people aren't always wealthy. Wealth is quiet. It's the boring number in an account nobody sees. What you're building, night by night, decision by decision, isn't wealth. It's a very convincing set piece. You don't see that yet. You're too busy enjoying the view. That's when you meet him. He's not part of your old life. He's part of this new one. Introduced at one of those parties you didn't used to get invited to. Confident. Easy to talk to. The kind of person who makes you feel like the two of you have known each other for years, even though it's been 20 minutes. He brings up the win almost immediately. "You've got talent," he says, like it's obvious. Like everyone in the room can see it but you. You laugh it off. "It was luck." You know it was luck. He shakes his head. Luck doesn't happen twice. But talent does. He tells you about a game. Nothing crazy, nothing reckless sounding, just something you'd probably be good at. He frames it less like gambling and more like an underused skill, one you just happen to discover in the most dramatic way possible. Somewhere in that conversation, a small shift happens inside you. A seed. You start to wonder, quietly, privately, if maybe he's right. Maybe it wasn't just chance. Maybe there's something about the way you read the room, the way you made that last call, that separates you from everyone else at that table. This is worth naming clearly, because it's one of the most dangerous ideas a person can accidentally believe: overconfidence bias. It's the tendency to overestimate your own skill, knowledge, or control over outcomes, especially right after a success. Confidence itself isn't the problem. The problem is confidence that isn't backed by evidence, standing in for confidence, that is. Closely related is the hot hand fallacy. The belief that a string of wins means you're on a streak, more likely to keep winning because you're somehow locked in. In games of pure or mostly pure chance, this isn't true. Each outcome is independent. The dice don't know, you just won. The wheel doesn't remember your name. And its mirror image is the gambler's fallacy. The belief that after a string of losses, a win is somehow due. Both beliefs come from the same broken instinct. The human brain is a pattern recognition machine, and it will find patterns even in pure randomness, because finding patterns is what kept our ancestors alive. It's just badly suited for a roulette wheel. You don't hear any of these terms out loud that night. You just feel the pull of an idea that's flattering, exciting, and completely unproven. You test it. Just once, you tell yourself, just to see. You win. Not as big as before, but enough. Enough to feel like confirmation. Enough to feel like your new friend might be onto something. The next time, you bet a little more. Win again. Something in your chest starts to change. Not greed. Exactly. More like certainty. A quiet, growing belief that you understand something other people don't. Your risk tolerance climbs without you noticing it climb. The bets that would have felt reckless a week ago now feel reasonable, normal, almost cautious by comparison to what you could be betting. This is a well-documented pattern in human psychology. After repeated success, especially success that feels validating, people's appetite for risk increases, sometimes dramatically. It's part of why so many financial disasters, from individual portfolios to entire institutions, happen not during a losing streak, but during a winning one. Confidence compounds faster than caution does. This is the moment to talk about how professionals, real investors, real risk managers, actually think about risk, because it's almost the exact opposite of what's happening in your chest right now. Risk management starts with a simple question. What's the most I can lose, and can I survive it? Professionals size every bet around that question, not around how good the last outcome felt. Expected value is the mathematical heart of that question. The average outcome you'd expect if a bet were repeated many, many times. A bet can feel good and still have a negative expected value. Feelings and math are not the same instrument, and only one of them is reliable over time. Position sizing is the discipline of never letting one single bet or investment be large enough to end the game if it goes wrong, and diversification, spreading exposure across many independent outcomes instead of one, exists for exactly one reason, because no single outcome, however confident it feels in the moment, should ever be allowed to decide everything. Professional investors don't avoid these principles because they lack confidence. They follow them because they've seen, over and over, what confidence does when it's left unchecked. You haven't seen that yet. All you've seen, so far, is winning. Your mother calls. She's heard about the new friend, the new habit forming underneath the new lifestyle. She's careful with her words, but you can hear the worry underneath them. Your oldest friend says it more directly. This doesn't feel like you. Even the financial advisor your accountant recommended, the one you met with exactly once, sends a follow-up email gently suggesting a more conservative plan, diversified investments, a structured withdrawal strategy. Boring words for boring, reliable outcomes. You read the email once and close it. Not because the advice is wrong. Some part of you probably knows it's right, but it doesn't fit the story you've started telling yourself. The one where you're not just lucky, you're capable, talented, different. So instead of the advisor's plan, you keep listening to the one voice that tells you what you already want to hear. This is confirmation bias, and it's one of the most quietly destructive forces in personal finance. It's the tendency to seek out, trust, and remember information that confirms what we already believe, while dismissing or minimizing anything that challenges it. It doesn't feel like bias from the inside. It feels like clarity. It feels like finally surrounding yourself with people who get it. The people warning you aren't wrong. They're just inconvenient. And inconvenient truths are the easiest ones to ignore. There's a night, a few weeks later, when everything narrows down to one decision. You don't remember exactly how you got there. One more bet leading to another, each one a little larger than the last, each one justified by the one before it. But you're standing at a table now, and the number in front of you isn't a fraction of what's left. It's almost all of it. Your new friend is beside you, quiet for once. Even he seems to understand the size of this one. Time slows down here, and it should. This isn't a moment to rush through. You think about the apartment, the car, the version of yourself that everyone's been looking at for the past few weeks, the lucky one, the talented one, the one who can't lose. And underneath all of that noise, there's a quieter, older feeling. Something that sounds a lot like doubt. You push it down. This is loss aversion at work, one of the most studied ideas in behavioral finance. The pain of losing something is felt roughly twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining the same amount, which means standing at this table, the thought of walking away, of locking in what's left instead of chasing what's gone, feels almost unbearable. Not because it's a bad idea, because loss, even avoided loss, doesn't feel like a win. It just feels like less. This is exactly where emotional decision making overrides financial logic. In a calm, rational moment, you would know that the math of this bet doesn't favor you. But you're not in a calm, rational moment. You're standing inside weeks of adrenaline, validation, and a story about yourself you're not ready to let go of. Probability versus emotion. This is the entire battle, reduced to its simplest form. Probability doesn't care how you feel. It doesn't know about the apartment, the friend, the version of you that everyone's been watching. It's indifferent, cold, exact. Emotion doesn't know any of that either. It just knows it wants to feel like a winner one more time. You place the bet. The wait is the longest few seconds of your life. Then it's over. There's no scream, no dramatic collapse, just silence. The same silence from the very first night, except this time it doesn't feel like the beginning of something. It feels like the end of one. You lose. Not some of it. Not most of it. Essentially all of it. The room doesn't stare at you this time. It's already moved on, the way rooms do. You're not the center of gravity anymore. You're just another person standing very still. The days that follow are quiet in a way that's hard to describe. The apartment gets more expensive to justify with every passing week. The invitations slow down, then stop. Your new friend, the one who saw talent in you, is somehow much harder to reach now than he used to be. That's the part almost nobody warns you about. The fake friendships built on top of money don't survive the money leaving. They were never really about you. They were about proximity to the win. What's left, once the noise clears, is a number. A real one. Not the number from that first incredible night, but the one that tells you where you actually stand now. This is the moment to talk about the concepts that matter most, not at the beginning of a windfall, but at the end of one. Net worth is the only number that ever really mattered. Everything you own, minus everything you owe. Not the lease, not the car, not the table at the restaurant. Just the honest difference between assets and liabilities, stripped of every story you told yourself along the way. An emergency fund. A modest, boring cushion set aside before any of the spending began, is the single most protective habit in personal finance, precisely because it exists for moments like this one. It's not exciting. It's not talked about at parties. It's just the difference between a setback and a collapse. And above all, of it sits capital preservation. The principle that protecting what you have comes before growing it, and always before risking it. It's a principle every professional investor learns early, because they've seen what happens to the ones who learn it late. Building wealth is hard, but it's forgiving. It rewards patience, and it gives you chances to recover from small mistakes. Protecting wealth is unforgiving. One large enough mistake, made at the wrong moment, can undo years of careful decisions in a single night. You didn't know that going in. Now you do. Here's the truth this story was built to leave you with. You didn't lose because gambling exists. Gambling didn't do this to you. Windfall psychology, lifestyle inflation, overconfidence, confirmation bias, loss aversion. These forces did. And they don't only show up at a casino table. They show up in investing, in business, in every decision where sudden success tempts you to believe you found a shortcut around discipline. The people who build lasting wealth, real, durable, generational wealth, almost never do it in one dramatic night. They do it slowly, through investing that compounds quietly over years, through businesses built one decision at a time, through skills sharpened over a career, not a weekend, through financial decisions that are, frankly, a little boring, because boring is what safety actually looks like once you strip away the story. Statistically, that slow path is far safer than chasing the version of wealth you win in a single moment. Not because it's less exciting, because it's less fragile. You didn't lose because gambling exists. You lost because you believed one lucky day could replace a lifetime of smart financial decisions.